Hey, Ryan, can you hear me? I am going to announce the Alveda King event. If you want to pull up the iowaprayerbreakfast.com, iowaprayerbreakfast.com.
Welcome to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And thank you for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. This is Truth for Our Time, where we help you live God's Word in today's world. We help you when the headlines hit home and we talk about everything. Because if God expects you to live through it, He's directed you how to do it in His Word. So we are thrilled that you could take time to join us. If you're live with us on live, thank you. We are right now currently taping the show. We're actually doing it live on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Central Time on Webcast One Live Studio. Webcast One Live. One is spelled out like the number. webcast1live.com. And then you get to hear it at 99.3 FM on Sunday at noon. So if you want to hear the live version, you want to have conversation with us, join us on the chat line. That right now is Wednesdays at 10. Although next week it's going to jump to Friday, and we may just stay at Fridays. We are weighing that out. Ryan, the producer, and I are working through our schedules and seeing if that might be a better fit, because sometimes the news we tell you changes between when we tape the show on Wednesday or do the show live and then Sunday when it airs in Central Iowa. So to make it a little less of a leap in between those times, we may shift our timing a little bit. But otherwise, we thank Webcast One Live Studios for having us and sharing the studio, and air on 99.3 KTIA, this voice of the voice of truth in Central Iowa, for sharing the air with us on Sundays. Now, a couple of things. Why we are changing next week is because, if you remember, my guest, I believe last week, was Kathleen Eaton Bravo. And I don't know if I got the website up. I apologize. As I told you, 2 grandbabies came in the last week, and both shows, Wednesday, I had to head out afterwards to go and, welcome my grandbabies. Isn't that why we do everything we do for the future for our kids? But and because it's the right thing to do. But so I'll try and get that up there. But Kathleen Eaton Bravo is with the Bria Clinics, and they have created a way through their technology and creativity to compete with Planned Parenthood online when these young girls are trying to search out for an abortion pill, an abortion itself. They do it in 15 seconds on their phones. And so through creativity and hiring a former Disney employee, Kathleen has come up with a way where pregnancy clinics can compete head-to-head with Planned Parenthood. She will be in town Wednesday, the 16th. 9 to noon, Wednesday the 16th, 9 to noon. If you would like to have a conversation with her, learn from her, we are having an informal meeting, nothing fancy, at the Airport Holiday Inn. But you need to call and reserve your seat. No cost to you. Truth for Our Time and working with the Airport Holiday Inn to absorb the cost and make it very workable. But you need to call or email truthforourtime@gmail.com, truthforourtime@gmail.com, truthforourtime@gmail.com. I could hear my mother in my ear going, slow down. And get your seat reserved. If you work with crisis pregnancy, pro-life group, any of those that want to stop the culture of death and help our young ladies who might be looking towards abortion find a way out and a way to save a life, then we'd love to have you join us. But you need to email truthforourtime@gmail.com. Let me know who you are, name, phone number, email, contact information, and the group that you are with. We'd love to have you join us. Also, joining, so we'll be doing it Friday next week. That will be the 17th, 18th, Friday the 18th at 10 a.m. on Webcast One Live Studios for those of you who want to join us. Then, also, on the 24th is the Iowa Prayer Breakfast. That is a long-standing tradition. I think we're up to the 55th year of having the Iowa Prayer Breakfast here in Iowa. It was started in conjunction with the D.C. Prayer Breakfast. And so this year's guest is Dr. Alveda King, friend of mine, friend of this show, friend of the pro-life movement, always speaking a wise word in season. And so she will be here. That breakfast is the 24th, Maundy, Thursday. It's always the Thursday before Easter, Maundy, Thursday. For those of you who are Catholics and Lutherans, that's Maundy, Thursday, 7 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. in the Community Choice Credit Union Convention Center Ballroom. That's downtown on 5th Street. Tickets are $25. Students are $10. And you can get those at the IowaPrayerBreakfast.com. IowaPrayerBreakfast.com. I invite you, I challenge you, I encourage you to get a ticket. Dr. Alveda King is always tremendous. She will be testifying the day before. Actually, maybe not testifying. I think the attorneys do that. But she will be at the Supreme Court. As we told you a week ago, maybe it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago with Mario Diaz from Concerned Women for America. The court will be hearing some of these very, very important cases, and I think this one is like the Little Sisters of the Poor, when churches and religious organizations are going to be forced to pay for abortion, possibly, or birth control that goes against their deeply held religious convictions, which is protected in our First Amendment. So she'll be flying in and with us there Thursday, the 24th, 7 a.m. to 8:45. Now, here's how it impacts Truth for Our Time as well. Truth for Our Time is working with KTIA 99.3 FM and going to allow the prayer breakfast to be taped and then aired that noon during the show. I will step aside and offer the airtime from the show so that you may hear just the speaker. You won't get all the fun of the prayer breakfast, the band. You will miss all of the speakers. You'll miss some of that, but the crux of it, for those of you who cannot get out, we will play again Easter Sunday for you at noon, and I'm thrilled that KTIA is doing that as a service to you and the community in the Iowa Prayer Breakfast. All right, so a couple things coming up. Today, they are hoping to debate the fetal tissue bill. That's Wednesday, today, as we're doing the show. By Sunday, it will either be a dead bill or it will have passed through the House. We're hoping that such a bill to stop a ban on the selling of unborn baby parts will certainly come out of an Iowa House. We certainly hope so. But there is some hesitancy. Why? Because apparently the University of Iowa is against this bill. Now, my friends, I have to ask you a question then, whether the bill dies or not. You have a question to ask yourself further. Why on earth would the University of Iowa have an issue with the protection from selling, which should be illegal anyway, and research on elective tissue, a tissue and organs and body parts from elective abortions? We have had the folks from Charlotte Lozier Institute on this show before, and they have assured you that you will lose no research whatsoever by stopping the sale and the research on unborn babies, on tissue, on organs from elective abortions, between miscarriages and natural occurring death in infants and those unborn. We will be able to have all of the research that we have according to Lozier Institute. So this stops nothing. So the fact that University of Iowa is stopping this bill should make you wonder what they are doing research on. Obviously, either embryonic stem cell, which has yet to offer anything positive into the realm of research, cures, treatments, anything, nothing. There is nothing yet to come from it. You cannot have research without first killing the embryonic cell, so it's not even a positive. It's morally, it is, you're putting a price on the head of the unborn, whether it's an embryonic, frozen embryo, whatever it may be. We're fueling the demand, and this must stop. And so for those of you who are taxpayers, this is already impacting you. Not only do we get this information from the illegal selling, supposedly, allegedly, to Planned Parenthood affiliates and organizing the organization, when Center for Medical Progress released several of those videos when they discuss pricing, they discuss harvesting the baby parts in a very callous and cold manner. So that's your tax dollars when Planned Parenthood gets those tax dollars. But University of Iowa gets loads of your tax dollars right here in Iowa. So you need to ask yourself, what are they doing? And we need to demand some answers as taxpayers, because they need not be doing research, one, unethically, immorally, and we see absolutely no cure, treatment coming from it. And even if we did, aren't we a better people than that? So that will be the question you need to be asking. We need to be forcing the issue into discussion. Let's try and have some later on this show. Also, one of the bills, there's a couple bills there. We'll do more on this later. HF 2372 passed the House. This is a shared parenting bill. Let me tell you, folks, when we step outside of God's plan for marriage with divorce, no matter how many laws we come up with, you can't make it better. You cannot fix what we have already destroyed from God's plan. So we're going to have to figure out this bill, because I'm getting a lot of mixed signals on this bill. We'll search that more for you. And then SF 2264 talks about guardian ad litem. In the bill, I've got it pulled up. It's talking about the court shall, at the request of one parent, which parents often don't get along in a divorce, why they're probably getting divorced in the first place. So if one requests it, a guardian shall be a practicing attorney, shall be solely responsible for representing the best interests of the minor child, but they will be appointed. This is going to be a whole nother mix into the game. You're taking parenting outside of the home, away from the biological parents, and you're putting it in the hands of government. This is not a good idea, I can just tell you. And the framing in this, and some of that we've heard, is informal guardian, which is what we're going to talk about later with our guest today. Will Estrada will be joining us from the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Will Estrada talking about some of the things coming out of the Department of Education where they say, hey, we consider parents our equals. That's your federal government. We consider parents our equals. And then before he joins us, Alice Linehan is coming on. And I think, is Alice on the line now? Alice is a friend to this radio station, this radio show, and also to you as a parent. She has a radio show herself called Women on the Wall. Alice Linehan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on. It's an honor.
I appreciate the work that you do. When I say the term informal guardian, and I tell you that the federal government put out a paper last December, I believe, redefining the family is what they're after. Here's what they say. The term family is used to include all the people who play a role in a child's life and interact with a child's early childhood program or school. This may include fathers, mothers, grandparents, foster parents, formal, informal guardians, and siblings, and among others. Does that not just light a fire underneath you, Miss Alice?
It sure does. And, you know, one thing that I want people to really be aware of, and especially moms and dads and grandparents, people that are closest to that child. First of all, we're not going to elect someone to save us, whether it's at the national level, the state level, or even many times the local level. We have to step in as moms and dads and protect our own children. And one of the things that we hear going on in the education world right now is everyone is saying, opt out of the test, get rid of the test, which is valid because the tests aren't valid, whether it's PARCC or Smarter Balance or these end-of-course exam type tests or end-of-year exams. But what people need to understand is when you get rid of the test, what is going to come in to replace it? And what we know is that in all 50 states, there is work being done to bring in in Texas, it's called the Next Generation of Assessments and Accountability. They call it different names in different states. But what that is doing, the opt-out movement, is actually ushering in an even more dangerous movement, which is formative assessments. Formative assessments are basically the daily monitoring of your child, and it is assessing their attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors, and can modify it through assessments that are given or activities that are given. And so when you see language like what you're talking about, where the state and federal government is on an equal playing field with the parents who have the inalienable rights and from God, not the state or federal government, to have authority over that child, when the state and the federal government have an equal footing, if you will, when they are giving mandated formative assessments and monitoring these behaviors, they become in control of the next generation of Americans.
And there's our danger. We've got to come right back after this break. We'll have more information with Alice Linehan. Stay tuned. 99.3 FM, Truth for Our Time.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah!
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And I am Tamara Scott. We appreciate you spending your time with us, whether you're listening at the 10 a.m. Wednesday hour, which will be 10 a.m. Friday on the 18th, and or the noon o'clock slot on Sunday. We thank you for joining us. On air with me right now is Alice Linehan. Alice is from Texas, and her show is called Women on the Wall. She's been very engaged in the education movement, fighting some of the Reformation programs, the educational reforms coming out of D.C., and the grasp that they want to have on our children. Alice, you were just talking about the formative test. If people are opting out, and we know some 60,000 parents in New York opted out, and numbers that would astound most in other states opted their children out. And we encourage people to opt their children out because these tests and the assessments that they're collecting, the data that they're selling on our kids is just far too personal to allow our kids to take. But you're saying now, even if they drop out, there's the formative assessments that are equally dangerous.
Exactly. And they are used to collect data on our children. And when I say they're collecting data, they don't necessarily want to know who a particular child is. What they are doing is basically sorting our children for competency in the workforce. And so now, in many states, at the end of 8th grade, a child has to decide what they want to be when they grow up. And so we're only going to educate you to be competent for this job in the workforce. That's very dangerous. But then there's other things that they are doing. Dr. Peg Luksic has got some great videos out on it where they're basically modifying our children's behavior,
Yes.
and they can modify the assessment.
Yes, so what they're calling them is computer adaptive test.
Yes.
But they are also behavior adaptive test and behavior adaptive tools. And I actually just put one of those. Her 6-minute link is on the Stop Common Core Iowa page in the Facebook. And there are a couple Common Core Iowa pages. Make sure you get the correct one that has the cookie cutter across the top picture. It's got cookie cutters on it. And so that is, there's a 6-minute video on there for Dr. Peg Luksic. And on it, she informs you not only are these computer adaptive tests going to take your kids different ways, so you'll have a hard time knowing what exactly your children were asked, depending on how they answer their questions, yes, no, correct, or incorrect, they'll go to different areas. But what she explains and what Alice is saying, they have studied and they know how to modify behavior, how they get someone to change their thinking without pushback. And that's what they figured out in these testing. One of the examples she gives is a student, it's a reading test, but a student is asked, if you find a wallet with money in it, would you keep it? And her point is, if the child says yes or no, does that make them a better reader or not? It doesn't define their reading at all. It defines their character.
What is also happening that we need to be aware of is that through these assessments, formative assessments, these software companies are providing the assessment tools. And so teachers are no longer responsible for knowing the subject that they are teaching. They are merely facilitators. And so there was a video that I can send you to. It was the new SAGE test, or a SAGE formative assessment tool. And it gives the teacher the ability to use a computer program to pull in the activities and the lessons and to teach. Basically, it's a virtual classroom, and the teacher's merely a facilitator. That is also very dangerous because the teacher is no longer in control of the content and the curriculum that is being given to the child.
Local control. That's what we need. And that's what you said when you first came on this program. We have this parade of would-be presidential candidates ahead of us, or would-be presidents. And my concern, even though folks know I am my time away from here, I am a national committee woman for the Republican Party for Iowa, so I am engaged politically. But I will be the first to tell you, we have so overemphasized this time. I don't think our founding fathers ever intended for elections to start taking 2 years. People would be campaigning 2 years in front of us, the millions and billions that are spent. And while we're so busy seeing this parade go before us, those who are already elected are taking our liberties behind us while they're in office right now.
You're exactly right. I will be very curious to see if Marco Rubio and Senator Ted Cruz today, they're supposed to vote on the next Secretary of Education. And John King is Dr. John King, who came from New York, who is very, very dangerous, in my opinion, as the next Secretary of Education until the next president is elected. Will they be out campaigning, or will they be in Washington voting on that position? We need people who are doing the day-to-day work to stop what is coming in, not necessarily out campaigning daily.
And for those of you who are listening on Wednesday, if you're listening on Sunday, then that vote will probably have taken place. But if you're listening on Wednesday, well, if you get a tape of this show and can listen on the archive a little bit later, 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121 is a switchboard at the U.S. Capitol. It will get you to any congressional member. So you can call. And did you say, I'm sorry, was that in the House or the Senate?
It's in the Senate.
So you can call your senators, your 2 senators, and ask them to vote against King for the Department of Education. That's what you're saying?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because what we know is that that position as Secretary of Education has the power to approve or not approve the state mandated assessments. The power that Secretary of Education has because of the passage of ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that was originally passed in 1965. When they were pushing that reauthorization, they said it's going to give power back to the states. But in fact, this is a system that has been created to lock in place whether it is implemented at the local level, the state level, or the federal level. So that position of Secretary of Education is key, and it will be key for the next president of the United States. We need to be asking, who are you going to put in that position? Because that position will have so much power to approve or not approve what each individual state does, with the threat of taking away those federal dollars.
And even better, we can ask them who they're going to appoint the head of the education department temporarily or an interim while they dissolve the federal Department of Education and give power once again back to the states. And that is possible. That is possible for us to do. We have some folks who are already working behind the scenes, not in the behind the scenes to be secretive, but just trying to find ways that we could start tailoring those programs, that we take the heat off or the responsibility from the federal level and give it back to the states. Because you can't just say we're going to close the Department of Education. What does day 2 look like? You can't leave an educational system floundering. So for those candidates who are talking about that when the crowd cheers, some of us are already trying to figure out ways that we can make that a viable plan and give that power back to you in the states. Ryan, do we have William Estrada joining us as well? Excellent. William Estrada is with he's a director of federal relations for the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. He's also the director of federal relations for parentalrights.org. Two organizations should be most concerned about this as well. And you are welcome to join us with Alice Linehan. Alice is with Women on the Wall. And Alice, you are welcome to stay throughout the program if you wish. We love having you here. We love the information that you bring to us. We were just talking about the power grab coming out of Washington, D.C., the concern of who might be the next director of the Department of Education. And I'm reading the article that Will Estrada wrote when he's talking about the power grab, whether it's through their bureaucrats pushing the Common Core, the dangerous UN treaties that would elevate the UN bureaucrats over parents, the Pentagon's attack to track all military families by where their children are educated, and former host, MSNBC host and Tulane University professor Melissa Harris Perry's claim that kids belong to the whole community. Thank you for joining us, Will Estrada. Thank you for writing the article.
Well, it's great to be on, Tamara, and I'm familiar with Alice's work as well, and she is a great voice fighting for parental rights and control over education instead of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely, and I'm pleased to have both of you on this program. If I can be the one to introduce the two of you, how about that? How fun for me to get to bring two powerhouses together who are protecting the family. Let's talk about this. Your article, why you wrote the article, the federal what group was it that wrote this paper in December, this policy?
Okay, so in case our listeners haven't yet seen it, in December of 2015, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, remember, this is the agency that's implementing Obamacare, and then the U.S. Department of Education, both together issued a draft policy statement on family engagement. Now, it's important to note there are no new policies being recommended in this draft policy statement. Instead, they wanted to kind of come up with a framework that early education providers, public schools, federal programs that fund home visitation programs or child nutrition, that they just have kind of a set of principles that they abide by when they're working on these. And it was an incredibly enlightening document. And as we read this document, it's important to note it's a draft document. It's not yet been released in its final version. We really said this unmasks what the federal government is all about, why they're involved in pushing the Common Core, why they're involved in so many of these early education programs. For example, President Obama's call to have a universal early education program, educating 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and in his words, preparing them for the global marketplace. And it was incredibly enlightening because here's what this document said. This is a quote from the first page. It is the position of the departments that all early childhood programs and schools recognize families, quote, as equal partners in improving children's development, learning, and wellness across all settings, end quote. Our federal government is saying families are not the first and most important place where children are educated and raised. They are equal partners with government bureaucrats. A little later on, they went to redefine the family to say it includes all the people who play a role in a child's life and interact with the child's early childhood program or school. This may include fathers, mothers, grandparents, foster parents, formal and informal guardians, siblings, among others. They've redefined who the family is, just anyone who interacts with a child, and they've said, we as the government are equal partners with parents. It's pretty concerning.
This should alarm every parent, grandparent out there. Now, we're going to have to take our break right here. I hope you'll stay tuned as I'm with Will Estrada and Alice Linehan talking about the federal government's power grab over your children. This is not to be taken lightly. Stay tuned. We'll have more for you with Truth for Our Time on 99.3 FM and Webcast One Live Studios.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fix them the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
I am Tamara Scott. Thank you for staying tuned with us on Truth for Our Time, helping you live God's Word in today's world. When the headlines hit home, and here in Iowa, for those of you who won't hear this till Sunday, it may be too late, but SF 2264 right here in our own state Senate, a very concerning bill, not an education bill, but the same language we're hearing out of the Department of Human Health and Services Health and Human Services that Will Estrada is talking about. Alice Linehan from Women on the Wall. We're talking about language coming out of educational departments when they start talking about the family as if the government is equal. The document that Will is talking about says the government considers themselves, we are your equals to parents. In the bill I'm talking about, this is where they will appoint a guardian ad litem to a divorce case. And this language, I'm not sure if I can still find that language, very, very concerning. Rather than talking about it possibly happening, it sounds like it will happen. See, used to it said, if the child's age is appropriate prior to any court-ordered hearing. This now is taken out, and it says maintaining regular contact with the child. This is someone appointed to make decisions now for your child. Think that through, interviewing any person providing medical, mental health, social, educational, other services to the child prior to any court-ordered hearing. And again, they could interview anyone they decide is important. You know how hard it is as two in a marriage to always agree on what's best for your children. Think this through, folks. If you're considering a divorce, think again. It will not be easier for your children. It will be more difficult. The residue that will be left on your children can be life-damaging for eternity. And it's not going to get easier as the government comes into your homes, and now decides what they think is best. Some court-appointed attorney is going to decide what they think is best for your child. This is so dangerous, and although this bill may be done by the time you hear this show on Sunday, you need to know this is happening in your state legislature right here in Iowa, and it's the same thinking, same philosophy that Will Estrada and Alice are warning us about. Will's article is called Feds. I found it on actually the GOP USA, but Will, you have one on Homeschool Legal Defense Association, hslda.org.
You can go right to hslda.org/federal, and it's our lead story there. And, you know, Tamara, as you're talking about that state bill, I'm reminded that America is only a few years behind some of the other Western countries.
Right.
2 years ago, Scotland passed into law what's called the Named Persons Act. This bill says at the moment of birth until graduation from high school, every single child in Scotland has a government-appointed guardian who makes sure the parents are providing a good education, upbringing, safe home, food, all that sort of thing. There's no finding of abuse or neglect. It's from the moment of birth. And it shows the distrust that big government has for parents. I have on my desk Hillary Clinton's 1996 book, It Takes a Village.
I wondered if we'd talk about that today. Yes, go ahead.
You know, it is not something that's new that just came out of the Obama White House. This has been a trend for the past couple decades, and we're seeing it ramping up, that the government thinks they know best, that they're your equals when it comes to raising your children. And we need to fight back against it.
Hillary's book, you're right, 1996. Alice, I was sharing with you that I have drugged my feet on writing. That was the first book that I wanted to write. My title would have been, Have You Seen the Village Lately? It's what I'm protecting my child from.
That's exactly right. And I think that Will makes a very good point, that this is nothing new. This is actually the third radical push, if you will, for this type of takeover. You had it in the late 60s, early 70s, then again in the late 80s, early 90s, and now we've got another rendition of it. What is so dangerous, I think, at this juncture in time is the technology and the ability for the data collection. And so, we said it before, I don't think we're going to elect someone to save us. We've got to save ourselves and our children, and the way to do that is to not only opt your child out of a test, but out of technology that is using these formative assessments to gather data where they will be tracking, as Will said, and it's actually from preschool through the workforce. We have now shifted from a K-12 education system to what's called a P20W, right, from preschool through the workforce, where they will be tracking individual citizens.
And folks, there will be no expunging something off your record. If you know a student who got off on the wrong foot, had a bad year, troubles at home, whatever, and you move them to a new school, or you get a new school year and you have a new teacher, there's a new start, fresh start. That will not happen with this record of this tracking following your student across the nation. Will, let's come back to some of this in your article. These programs you're talking about, you're both right, this is not new. However, the claws are deepening into the flesh of the family, because with these programs, whether it's the Affordable Health Care Act, whether it's the Head Start, all these programs that start out voluntary or elective, then become selective, and they decide who must be in it or who should be in it, and then it becomes coercive. And that's what we're seeing. And they've got more clout than ever, Will, to be doing this and to be controlling our families through their programs.
You know, it always goes back to what Ronald Reagan said. The 9 most terrifying words are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. And so you're absolutely correct. The government cannot come in right now in the United States and say, we're going to dictate how you raise your children. But they can if you voluntarily choose money from the government. How is this? Through putting your kids in public school, through putting your kids in a virtual public education program, some of the online charter school programs that are many times marketed to homeschool families, through some of the early learning programs. And again, at Homeschool Legal Defense, you know, if your family needs services, we would never tell you not to choose them, although we have a foundation that provides millions of dollars because of the generosity of homeschoolers to other homeschool families so they can privately help their children and get the support they need and not have to turn to the government.
And let me just put this...
open the door to the government, their strings are attached, and that's how they're coming in. And this is a report for government officials who are providing, quote-unquote, help to families of, remember, these families are only equal partners with you. That's where it's coming in.
And I will also say, Don Stefanowicz warned us of this on this program, even on another network. Don is the daughter of a homosexual father, and in Canada, they are a little bit ahead of us in this area. And she said, when you come up with same-sex marriage, then you will degenerate all parents to guardians so that none have a higher priority over others. And this is what we're seeing. Scott, when you say the government is realigning the order of the family and the definition to be whomever or whatever the government says it is.
That's exactly what's happening. They're weakening the definition of the family. It's really, again, I'm going to go back to this quote. They say here in the document, in footnote 1 on page 1, the term family is used to include all the people who play a role in a child's life and interact with a child's early childhood program or school. And I'm going to insert this footnote. Alice, this goes to your point. What if a tech vendor is interacting with a child's early childhood program or school? Under this broad definition of the family, it looks like, are they trying to say they are part of the family? Then this footnote goes on, quote, this may include fathers, mothers, grandparents, foster parents, formal and informal guardians, and siblings, among others. You can drive a semi-truck through this definition of the family.
Ryan, can you cue up Melissa Harris Perry's comment before we go to break?
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
Melissa Harris Perry, former Tulane University professor and Pentagon and former MSNBC host. We've got to go to break. We're going to be right back with Will Estrada and Alice Linehan. Now we're going to tell you what you can do, what you need to do to be the responsible guardian that God gave you of your own children.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens. Rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
Northern Lights Pizza, your home of the tasty crust. Our garlic butter sauce now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And thanks for staying with us. Will Estrada is my guest from Homeschool Legal Defense Association, hslda.org, and Alice Linehan with Women on the Wall. Alice, contact information for you.
You can go to Alice at womenonthewall.org, and I am available, or you can go to voicesempower, EMPOWER.com.
And we just listened to the clip. Melissa, I believe it's Perry Harris, telling us that our kids belong to everybody. This is the new philosophy, and I guarantee you, Bernie Sanders, who's wanting to pay for everyone's education, which you cannot do. We're learning that with healthcare, as people are getting bills for the healthcare they couldn't afford, and when their good healthcare that they had increased in premiums, and so they were no longer able to buy their own healthcare as they had done responsibly for years because the premiums rose to such an amount, and then they're forced out of their health care, and then they get fined for an amount higher than the health care anyway. You're going to see the same thing, same type of thing. If you think that you will have government paying for your college, they'll tell you where you can go, who can study, what they can study, and who can't. This is not a good idea, and you're giving the government and the public schools the ability to regulate your children. And I just noticed, by the way, folks, this week I heard that Home Depot has to pay so much money in damages for data breaches that occurred. We've had several large chains have data breaches, information hacked. But, oddly enough, it seems to happen in the government as well. And happened at a University of Northern Iowa here with employees, even messing up their tax returns. It was to such a degree. And we had it happen at the Iowa State University with student information, a large number of students, and yet government never seems to have to pay those fines after the damage has been done in the lives. And so we're talking about the selling of your child's information, very personal information, hacking possible, and now the government will have access to all this. And in the bill that's before the Senate right now in Iowa, if you are going to enter into a court system for custody or any of those situations, someone else, an outside party, will be deciding what's best for your children. This is so frightening, absolutely frightening. Will Homeschool Legal Defense, when I was homeschooling my children, there was a covering that I had just being a member. I was told as a high-profile member I should be under their protective legal counsel. I was able to print off the stop sign, put it by my front door, and if anyone came to my door, I called that 1-800 number, and I would have legal counsel right there at that moment. To the point when we put our kids in a Christian private school one year, I felt vulnerable because I lost that covering. So that's just one of the things that Homeschool Legal Defense does for homeschooling families. But Will, what is your help? What do you need to say to folks to help them find a way to protect their children? Because I don't think parents understand they are knocking at your door.
That's absolutely the case, Tamara. And I'm actually, as one of the HSLDA attorneys, I take those calls all the time. We have 24/7 access to an attorney. If a social worker or government official is trying to get into your home outside of your consent, and we take seriously our role for the past 33 years of defending homeschool freedom. My primary job is lobbying on Capitol Hill, and there is a good story to this draft report that we've been discussing. Last week, I was at the U.S. Department of Education. They were hosting a listening session where people come in and just talk about the new Every Student Succeeds Act and what the Department of Education is doing. They had leaders from various departments or divisions from the U.S. Department of Education, and I turned to the early education folks and I said, what were you thinking when you drafted this document? We strongly oppose it. Parents are the primary responsibility for raising a child, and any teacher will tell you it's parental involvement that is the key to student success, which is why homeschooling works so well, because the parents are so involved. And they nodded their head and they said, I think that draft policy document came out the wrong way. It wasn't intended to be that, blah, blah, blah. We're working on fixing it. So we conveyed that message loud and clear to the U.S. Department of Education that they are 100% out of line. They said they're going to significantly change it when they release the final document. We'll have to see how that happens. But, at its heart, we need to be very vigilant against a federal government that thinks it's equal with parents. If I may say one more thing, Tamara, Alice brought up a good point about the dangerous role that data collection is playing in our children's privacy. And our listeners have a chance right now to send a message. The U.S. Senate is getting ready to consider President Obama's nomination of John King to be the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education. John King pushed for the In Bloom database, which was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It would have collected 400 points of data on every single student. It was such an Orwellian database that actually it shut down because governors pulled out of it and said, no, we're not going to send our public school data to it. But he was a very strong proponent of it. I urge our listeners, call your 2 U.S. senators and urge them to reject John King's nomination to be the Secretary of Education.
Thank you so much, Will. And Alice was good to tell us about that in the first part of the show as well. 202-224-3121 is that Capitol Hill switchboard. 202-224-3121. I'm getting it mixed up with my studio number here a little bit. Call that. Even though some of you may not hear the show till Sunday, that vote may have taken place. But
well, it probably won't take place for the next couple of weeks. That's what we're hearing.
Excellent. Good. Very good. Then call that number. Send it out to your friends. We'll put it on our website. Any of these archives will be on tamarascott.com, and we'll get that information there for you as well. And so homeschooling, you're there, and I'm pleased to say I didn't ever have to call you in need of an attorney. But so, folks, you don't have to be so intimidated. There are ways and lots of programs out there to help you. And think this through. God gave you your children. He uniquely designed the children He gave you for you to raise. It is your responsibility, and He will bring people around you to help you. You will be amazed. I could give you testimony of scholarship that came through for my students when I homeschooled them. That was one of my biggest concerns. And my husband finally said, whatever you leave out, whatever they might have as an educational gap, will be far better than the crap, excuse me, folks on air, that they get in the schools, because I was having to deprogram them when they came home from school. Alice, in the last minute, what would you like to say to our listeners? What do they need to be doing? What can they be doing? Encourage some of them to take responsibility for their children.
Yes, I think that is the number one task, is to secure your own child or grandchild and make sure that they are protected, and then work to educate yourself and become the expert on these issues in your local community so that you can educate others so that they can protect their own children. It's going to be a bottom-up, grassroots effort to take back our children and our country.
Will Estrada, contact information for you?
It's call our number, 540-338-5600, or you can see our webpage at hslda.org. And to see this article about the U.S. Department of Education claiming they're equal to parents, go to hslda.org/federal.
Alice, contact information?
You can go to womenonthewall.org, and I invite everyone to join us every Wednesday night. We have a conference call. Tonight we'll be talking about the ESSA, and you can find that information at womenonthewall.org.
Thank you for listening in, folks. You've been challenged. You've been encouraged. Never be complacent.